COVID-19, popularly known as coronavirus, has affected every sector in our life. It has disrupted education around the world. Some of the measures taken by the Somaliland government in a bid to reduce coronavirus infections in the country was closing down institutions of learning across the nation. Classes are now taught online, and this has led to visualization more than ever of the gap between infrastructural capabilities of schools in rural and urban areas. Will COVID-19 have an impact on our viewpoint when it comes to making decisions on matters education in Somaliland? To discuss this and much more, I spoke to Dr. Mohamed Madar, a doctorate holder in sustainable development and matters education, and a passionate educationist based in Borama. Thank you very much for speaking to us. COVID-19 has had a great effect and impact on many fractures of our world, whether it is our economy, whether it is travel. It has had huge impact. But on education, how has it affected education systems across the world?
Thank you for having me here. So actually at the global level, COVID-19 disrupted all education and institutions. Let it be universities, let it be higher education, let it be primary education, all sectors of education has been disrupted by COVID-19. And at the global level as well, COVID-19 swept the whole world. And some of the universities and educational institutions in different countries, they are total lockdown, or they are in a dragonia. So then I can say there is a severity when it comes to an education system and the global efforts for access to higher education and primary education as well. COVID-19 severely affected.
Since the pandemic started, there has been a transmission. People are transmitting from the traditional means of teaching to this new means that is using technology. How different is it? How different is this new form different from the traditional method that we were used to?
Actually, it depends on an institution that has been using the existing technology. So that institutions, they continue using their technology capacities. But the other institutions are those who have not been using the technological capacities, whether it is open source or whether it is generic or proprietary system that are designed for teaching and learning. But universities that have survived, or education systems that have survived in this crisis, are institutions that have already been using technology to deliver teaching and learning.
The technologies now need gadgets and equipment. For example, mobile phones, they need laptops, you need a tablet or internet connectivity, or perhaps radio or television. Okay. Third world countries, that is countries like us, what effect has it had on, for example, accessibility in terms of how many people do get access to these gadgets that are required for a child to get this particular education?
So actually the impact is severe relatively compared to the developed or the developing countries, because sometimes having technological capacities is needed as a resource and capacities. So in the fragile states, poor countries, the severity is much more than compared to the other and countries who have been able to mitigate or deploy and measures that they are going to reduce the impact of coronavirus. So then in the developing countries or fragile states members, their education system and their whole government institutions in the first place, they were weak in capacities. And coronavirus actually disclosed the weaknesses and the incapacities and the lack of innovations and lack of access to education system, the coronavirus disclosed all these weaknesses in many countries. Now they are using some basic technology that cannot actually meet the basic requirements for online and technology applications. So I can say the severity is very, very, very big.
Now that not so many people have access to internet in rural areas in Somaliland, and some of the information is passed through the internet, what are some of the visible and tangible effects it has had on education across the country?
Actually, one of the problems that poor countries like our people are facing are, lack of bandwidth. Or here the bandwidth is very expensive. Or in other words, existing technology are not enough to support the continuity of the education in this crisis. So then the inequality to education system, that gap is now ever increasing and incremented among the poorest people and the well-to-do families. So then I can say, when there's no internet availability and when there's no technological capacity within this education system, this crisis will worsen the situation whereby in the first place our access to education system, when it comes to rural areas, when it comes to remote areas, even in the urban areas, there has been an increase in inequality when it comes to education. So this crisis has worsened and increasing the existing gap. So then the question is that if we are going to deploy online and teaching and learning, so we need to ask ourselves, are those people in urban areas, remote areas, even in rural areas, are able to access to our education technology and education and programs that have been provided through these different media? I think even within the cities, there are a lot and huge and sizable amount of students who have been from a poor families are now unable to use all this technology. So then the question is that, are we focusing on those who can get access to the TV or to the technology or to the internet, or are we thinking about in a much more inclusive way that we can accommodate all these students from different background? So still I can see that people are trying to deploy technologies to continue and provide teaching and learning to the students to their homes. But again, it is reliable. Are they able to use? Are every students have a smartphone? Can they purchase a laptop? Can they access to internet? So that all these questions needs to be addressed and needs to be properly focused, so that we can see the progress that the online system that many institutions are trying, whether that system is instrumental or not, it needs to be reanalyzed and readdressed again.
Some of the remedies taken by our government and the solution that they thought will be used at this particular time is the use of radio. And we know that frequencies don't reach in some of our rural areas. How are these children getting their classes and lessons?
Actually, I can say that this crisis, as I mentioned it, worsens the situation when it comes to education, access to education in rural areas, villages, in the first place, and they have not been able to access to a proper education, and the system of that education was broken and was very limited. And before, there are many factors that use it to affect the education system in the rural areas. Let it be natural disasters like floods, let it be prolonged drought, like and before and 2 years ago, and our government does not have the capacity and to manage all these risks. So when it comes to COVID-19 crisis, rural, and areas, they have already been exposed to poor education system, but COVID-19 increased that gap and widened that gap. So then they do not have internet connection, so they do not have an electricity, they do not have enough and other media and technology that they can use. So then I can say it is almost very difficult or impossible that rural areas are able to continue their education and through those media that some of the institutions are deploying, whether it is TV programs, whether it is online technology, whether it is radio broadcasting. So all these things are not possible to happen in rural areas.
We know that radio and television are means that were at first used for entertainment. Do you personally think, as an educationist and as an expert in this particular field, that they can still be used as an avenue of transfer of information?
Every technology, has some limitations. Some of the technologies that many institutions are now using, they have and shortcomings. Radio broadcasting and TV broadcasting, they have numerous limitations. In the first time, and it is not a synchronized system whereby students and teachers are able to interact, whereby teacher is supposed to ask questions, whereby students are supposed to answer those questions. So the interactivity of teaching and learning is now and not there because of that technology has that limited capacity. There are other technologies like Interwise, Zoom, Illuminate. There are other technologies who are synchronous, but those technologies are very expensive. We cannot use it. Now we have the radio and we have the TV. Okay, our TV programs or our TV are not designed in a way to deliver content to the learners. The time is very limited and the capacity is very limited. So then if a student in rural areas misses out the hours that has been broadcasted, that program, that students will not get opportunity to watch that lesson that has been broadcasted yesterday or before yesterday again. And some of the rural areas, they have certain circumstances. Some of them are busy with farming, cultivating their farming lands. Some of them are busy with irrigating their, and farms or vegetables. Some of them are keeping their animals, So all these circumstances will not allow all these, students in rural areas to adapt, TV broadcasting, teaching and learning, let alone, and radio broadcasting, and which has the most limitations in the current technology that many, countries are using to support teaching and learning.
Do you think now, because of the pandemic, policymakers and people who make decisions affecting thousands of school-going children will now make positive decisions now that everything is visible and tangible, that things can be seen? Otherwise, it was theoretical, but now we have figures, we know its effect.
Yes, of course. At global level, education system is changing, and every institution now they are expecting or thinking about the strategies that they are going to use during the crisis. And universities or education institutions that survive within this COVID-19 crisis are the universities or education institutions that have already been using technology. For example, Universities of the Bible is fully online. So that university, Corona didn't affect it because already they have been using technology fully. there are many institutions that who have been using. So that institutions coronavirus may not able and may not affected them severely. But towards the policymakers, I think two things is very important to change our education system into a bit modern way, whereby institutions and like universities, like primary or secondary schools, are able to use or utilize available, open source and free technology in the first place before they purchase, costly technology. So first, I would like to suggest, let us explore what are the usable, free, and readily available technology that can be used or adapted in the first place. And the other thing is like that to encourage, all in higher education institutions and other, and education providers to adapt different technological, and applications that are available, and later establish e-learning hub or capacity or technology whereby when this crisis happen, able to continue to the education system and reduce, the effects of the other crises that may become in the future.
And for a teacher to use technology to teach, what does he or she need?
It is compulsory. Education institutions must twist with technology, because when the technology is growing, if you are not twisted with technology, you will be left behind, isn't it? So to cope all these, and limitations and challenges, first we need to train our teachers and train them in a way that they can able to use, technology for teaching and learning, and provide the necessary capacities and infrastructures that support this online system and happen. Likewise, students is also, they need to be trained, provided proper curriculum, which is updated, and curriculum needs to be innovated, to stand with and to follow the technological and trend at the global system. So I think both teachers need to be trained and the students need to be trained and provided those tools that they need to use during teaching and learning. Likewise, the whole institution needs proper training and relevant and suitable infrastructure that can be used in the future.
We're expecting to have our national examinations very soon, and the foreseeable future is that the pandemic is going to be with us. What effect will it have on our children, and do you personally think that we will have to do our national exams this year?
So I think, at this present time, now the COVID-19 crisis is slowly emerging in our context, and the cases are increasing. And I can say now we are feeling, the pain of COVID-19. And when it comes to national examinations and GCSE examinations, we have many options. Either we can practice social distancing and make, a schedule whereby, for example, in primary education will have the national exam a particular period of time, a small number, to apply social distancing. And the other alternative is like that, and schools in the urban areas and universities in urban areas, they can try to use technology that are designed for online examinations, like Google Forms is free. They can use also Survey Hub is also another free technology that can provide this service. They can also use a SurveyMonkey. There are many platforms that, if we properly utilize, can assist our students have the national examinations. Even we can apply social distancing, between and across students within the class. For example, if you apply social distancing and I think it's gonna be, possible to happen. But that need is strategic thinking.
And lastly, as an expert, what are some of the recommendations you have for policymakers at this particular time to find long-lasting solutions to some of our problems in the education sector?
Actually, and the policy we need first is to improve our education system in terms of standards, in terms of capacities, and what is chemistry, and training and all these things. And the other thing which is very important is re-innovate our curriculum and restructure our educational institutions so that our educational system will grow, and that standards will assist our educational institutions to produce something relevant to our children. And technology is also another important element that we need to incorporate education, and of course the other sectors of the economy. Lack of technology, lack of innovation, lack of innovation, lack of development, isn't it? So now technology brings about many solutions to different sectors, whether it is business, whether it is and health, whether it is environment, whether it is education. And particularly, unfortunately, education can be digitalized. Education can be a digital good, isn't it? But for example, the other product is some of them cannot be digitalized, because a loaf of bread I cannot digitalize, isn't it? But a curriculum I can make it digital and can deliver it online. So education has this opportunity. So I would like to suggest, let us focus on technological solutions. Let us focus on innovations that we can do, and let us first utilize the available free technology that are ready for us to use, and let us make priorities. So if we make this set of priorities, we can bring about good solutions for the future generation to come. And let us not say COVID-19 disrupted many things, and including the education institutions. Let us open our mindset and think, come together and put forward sustainable and suitable strategy to mitigate and reduce the challenges faced by our students.
Thank you very much for speaking to CBA. It was an honor speaking to you.